Hey, folks, for episode 61 of the Rental Roundtable, we had on Luke Powers. He's the founder and CEO of GearFlow, which launched in 2018. We talked about a lot of different things. Talked about his father-in-law, who in the 1970s started with $1,000, started a multi-location equipment rental company that was eventually acquired by one of the national players. We talked about the importance of uptime and putting some real numbers behind how costly it is to have equipment down on a job site. We talked about how in the construction industries right now it's the longest backlog we've had ever. Right, multiple years of backlog on the building side, which is ultimately going to be a boom for rental companies. A lot of positivity around that, and we talked about the future of technology and what they're doing around AI, and particularly around how they're solving procurement issues on job sites. So, love Luke, a lot of energy, fun guy to talk to. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, everyone, welcome to the Rental Roundtable, episode number 61. We have on Luke Powers, the founder and CEO of GearFlow. Luke, welcome to the show.
Kyle, thanks so much for having me on. This is cool. Looking forward to it.
So, it's crazy. It's the first time we've actually met, considering I
Yeah.
was looking on your LinkedIn. We have 152 mutual connections. So we know a lot of the same people. And also you have 4 kids, one of them named Kyle. So great name choice there.
That was great. I was gonna bring that up. Yeah, that's our if you've got one that you're like, you love all your kids tremendously and equally, but there's just one that drives you up the wall. That's Kyle, who we also call
That's
Boom.
Kyle.
That would be Kyle.
Kyle's got a bad rap. I think, Chad and Kyle and Karen sort of became like
Yeah.
a persona that maybe I wouldn't necessarily hope to fit into, but, anyways, here we are. It was a popular name, I think, like, in the '90s, and now it's coming back, right? So,
Right.
um, well,
Right.
anyways, Luke, it's great to have you on here. I think, first of all, for everyone who's listening, who doesn't know what GearFlow is, tell us
Yeah.
what GearFlow is. I wanna talk about your background, your history, but a lot to talk about today, but maybe just start off, like, what is GearFlow? What's your mission? Why do you exist today?
Yeah. Great. Thank you. So, GearFlow is where heavy civil contractors come to better serve their job sites and to procure what they need to keep equipment running on those job sites. Meaning, there's CMMS software, so that would be fleet management software. There's ERP software for accounting, and then procurement is like figured out in the middle. It's a bunch of
Mm,
phone calls, it's emails, it's texts, it's spreadsheets on spreadsheets, it's all this like crazy stuff. Because there's really nothing to digitize that part of the business, which is so critical, right? Downtime costs contractors, certainly in the heavy civil asphalt world, big money. One contractor talks about they did a study where it actually cost them $234 a minute that a paver goes down. It's about 113K a day.
wow.
Just a tremendous, right? And then there's tight margins, as you know. So it's average margin on jobs is 5.5%. Um, as I'm sure your viewers might appreciate being in the rental side of it. You guys, all serve those contractors. So anyway, what they can do on GearFlow is they can have a much easier way to procure the parts they need, as well as rentals, freight, and third-party service. So say you need a dealer to come out and service your machine. That's really what the job cares about, right? These fleet teams at the contractor level, they serve the jobs, right? Everybody's out to
Mm.
serve these jobs that are happening either throughout the region or throughout the country, depending on how big they are. And that's who really we serve. And we've pivoted to get there. I was happy to talk about the journey, but yeah. So that's GearFlow today.
Well, let's talk about the journey. But before we get there, you said every minute a paper goes down. You said that's $234 per minute.
Yeah, so that was an internal study done. Now, that is so you've done the groundwork, you've kind of the roads ready to pave, and you've got your paver there. Now, you probably want to have a second one on hand, but that is true. So if that paver breaks down, that's your delay cost, that's your labor cost, that's like all the costs wrapped up into what does that mean to the business. So that's of course mission
Mm,
critical. Now
yeah,
you would associate a different cost to a light tower not functioning, right? But
right.
nevertheless, if you take that example at 112K a day, 113K a day to a light tower, everything has a cost to it, and there's a business case to be made that your uptime is paramount, and so much of what these guys are doing every day is it takes a lot of time, and it's upstream. So from where the companies are perspective, it's like whenever they get contacted, right? So they're receiving these calls, they're receiving people coming in their office, they're receiving a text from a customer. That's when their work starts. But the contractor's work starts upstream from them, right? So it'll
Mm,
start at the job.
mm,
There's a operator that reports something to a foreman that the machine's broken down or is given this error code or whatever, then it's, their job, the superintendent or the foreman's job to, figure it out, right? So they're either going to get with an equipment specialist on that job, they got to get back with the field, or excuse me, the shop, and the people in the office, and it's this whole process that takes way too long. So and I was, get to my journey, but I was at the very end of the rental company before as our family business, and it's hectic. And when you get people calling you that are pissed off, that have their hair on fire, well, maybe it's because of what's happening at the job. It's because of that pressure that they're under to perform for that
Mm.
job. And that's really what, as a rental company, as a dealer or whatever, it's like, that's what you get. But there's, so you gotta make sure you meet them where they are. And anyway, so for GearFlow, there's a lot that can be done upstream and
Yeah.
can be
Yeah.
digitized and can be streamlined and automated, a lot of these steps. Because the vendor step is really that last 20%, right? It's like really helping them get that machine to the job, or third party service or part, or whatever, freight. Um, but yeah, it's a lot of those workflows that we think about and sit down with these fleet teams.
Well, even since we've started this episode for 5 minutes, we've already been down, over $1,000. If this was a paver,
That's
right? Been
right.
down for 5 minutes. I mean,
That's
just to put it
exactly
in
right.
perspective, almost $1,500 as we go. We can do the math of what the whole episode would be if this was down. But but I think it's a good lesson, right? Because the contractors on site stressed out, they're calling the rental company, right? So that gives them urgency of the why. And everyone knows uptime is important, but like time is money, and particularly like when you have mission critical equipment that's not working. And then we've seen it on the software side, right? Because then if there's an issue in the software somehow, right, and
Yeah.
you can't process an order for whatever reason, that is even more going downstream, right? So you can kind of see the trickle down effect, but it all goes back to uptime and how important that is for really everybody. So I think that's an interesting observation. I want to get to your story though, and how you started GearFlow. Obviously, I'm a tech founder in the construction space, so I like to hear origin stories. But you grew up in rental, actually, right? So tell me about how how you grew up, and what led to the genesis of GearFlow.
So yeah, so my started my career in logistics tech here in Chicago, which is where we're based. And my father-in-law, I'm sure maybe like many of your listeners, started with $1,000 in 1976. He met the founders of Genie here at McCormick Place, which is the large convention center here in Chicago. And Genie at the time in the 70s, I mean, I think it was like 10, 12 people. Um, he met Bob, he met Roger. I'm kind of forgetting their last names, but they didn't have a presence in the Midwest. So they're based in
Hmm.
outside Seattle. They're based in Washington, and it was like a crank up lift. Crank yourself up 10 feet, crank yourself down. And they competed with ladders. And I was like, what's this thing? Like, I can just easily buy a ladder, Warner ladder, and I'm fine. Um, so yeah, but they didn't have any presence here. They didn't have any dealers. So there was a handshake deal and
Hmm.
got him in the business. He sold the lift they had at McCormick Place, sent them, the funds, and then they sent him another lift. And yeah, so he became the longest serving dealer in the Midwest. So the business that he started was Randall Industries. So that was a 3 location rental company, one location outside Chicago, 2 in northern Indiana. And then there's another business that our family, it's my in-laws, it's my wife's father, who I started working for in 2012 in the sister company, which is called USM Re-Rents. And that's actually a wholesale rental company serving rental companies. So what our fleet is large, highly capital intensive assets like 125-foot booms, 150-foot booms, 180-foot booms, JLG and Genie, yeah, high capacity telehandlers, as well as atrium lifts. So anyway, I got the opportunity to call on rental companies throughout the U.S. and really kind of get closer to some of these big jobs that were happening that needed that level of gear, right? Even the national rental companies don't have enough 180s, 150s to support a stadium job that might need a dozen 180s, windmill farms, etc. A lot of those just big projects. So that was my job, and I got to feel the pains and the some of the struggles and also some of the joys of working in rental, and what the daily grind is. And um yeah, and so what kind of stood out to me was so much of our revenue and our profit is tied, of course, to the uptime of the fleet, right? As a rental
Hmm.
business, just like contract, it's if you got, and particularly for rental, right? That is the company. So you've got to be able to have the most effective and efficient means of keeping your equipment running at all times. So That is really tied to the productivity and efficiency of the mechanics, the maintenance team. Their productivity is tied to making sure they get the parts when and where they need. So that to me um, was pretty offline. I thought it was pretty archaic. I thought a lot could be improved there in those workflows. And then we've kind of pivoted from our original marketplace vision for the business into more of this, procurement software that is really designed
Mm,
for heavy civil contractors, asphalt contractors, some of these companies that rely on these, mixed fleets to do their work. And really built around their workflows. But it took years, I mean, even to learn their workflows, even coming from the industry, it took time
mm,
to really get in, build relationships, understand what are mechanics looking for, what's a parts coordinator looking for, what's a fleet manager looking for, how do they go to work every day, what are some of their struggles. The software's got to work for them internally, it's got to work for the vendor side from whom they work with. So anyway, it's been a lot of fun, getting to know a lot of these great fleets throughout the US. But anyway, it's a
yeah,
little
well,
bit of
it sounds like a few pivots, right? I'm curious to go back to 2018
sure.
when you started. What was like the procurement process like at that point, and before? Like, what was the pain point you saw? I was like, all right, this is so bad that like I have no choice but to go, start a tech company. Which, if you probably know the numbers, but like 91% don't last 3 years, 96% don't get to 1 million of revenue, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to do it anyways because the pain is so present. I have to go start
I'm
GearFlow. What
so
was that
glad I didn't know
experience
those
like?
numbers. I'm so glad. Did you know those numbers before you started?
uh, yeah, I did. So by the way, if you guys want to know the name of Quipli, it was eQuipli. That was trademark for equipment. Then it was Quipli with a Y. That was trademark. And I said, all right, let's just do Quipli with an I. I was like, this is 2020. This thing's not going to last that long. We'll change the name later. Well, here we are, still Quipli. Our first logo was $5 from Fiverr.com. We uh, we spent more on the new logo you can see here, but yeah, I for sure. I was like, I gave it my best. My thought was though, like if I just stuck with it, we didn't run out of money. I think we'd make something work, but most
Yeah,
don't make it, right? So I
right.
knew the stats for sure. That's why I know maybe we could have a better name if I
Yeah.
thought we'd make it this long. But
Yeah, I still
we're
love
5 years in. We crossed the threshold like you guys are 7 years in. So,
it.
but sounds like you didn't know those stats. Maybe I don't know if you would have started if you did,
Yeah.
right?
I didn't, and and it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. Like,
Yeah,
when you start, it's you should have a good idea. You should have a pretty clear plan. You should have an understanding of the pain. But then when you do the thing, it's just it evolves, right? And it should
yeah,
evolve.
yes.
Software is uh it's like half science, half art. You
Mm,
can take it many different ways, which is exhilarating, but it's also it can open you up to a lot of missteps. And you got to make sure you're moving and you're automating things that customers are saying, and also what they're not saying. Why is the step today? Would you digitize? Okay, that step sounds like you're looking for X button to do this thing. Yeah, no problem. I understand. That sounds like that's what's happening for you today offline, and maybe you're entering that in a spreadsheet. Why does that step exist? Right? Why does that even exist? Does it need to exist? Where does the data ultimately need to go? What is the data you're putting in, and where does it need to go, and why? Anyway, so that it took a long time to really I think be more of an expert in that than my firsthand knowledge. And getting back to your question, like there's so much a rental company's got to do to operationally to stay on top of keeping the trains moving on time. And
yeah.
it takes a lot of work. Keep the trains moving on time. There's less people coming into the industry now than there were historically. So it's like you're not, for every
Mm,
one, Gen Z or millennial coming in, there's three boomers leaving. That's a lot of tribal knowledge leaving.
mm,
So that's putting more pressure on the entire construction industry. Um, so and by the way, it seems like there's probably more of like right now in the last couple of years, I think more of a focus on that. I think people are starting to wake up at the costs of the ballooning cost of college. I heard a
mhm.
stat which was crazy. This is semi-related. I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but uh, the unemployment rate for a 4-year degree is about 8.5% for new grads. For trade school and the 2-year associate degrees is like 1.5%. It's
Wow.
crazy. So then the 4-year, you get the pleasure of basically a house
So that's
payment,
what, like
and
5 times higher or something for
yeah,
college grads? And also if you believe if you drink the Kool-Aid on what the Anthropic AI CEO is saying, he's saying that, within 3 years, 30% of entry level jobs are gonna be eliminated, right? So on top of that, like the white collar entry level jobs may be starting to be automated from AI, which makes those the question of going to college is already there, and that may be accelerated, right? With some of the AI stuff coming into white collar jobs, accounting, law, paralegal
Right.
sort of activity. So I think that's another tailwind to monitor. But I had lunch with the someone at the ARA last week who works on the labor side, getting more people into the industry, and that's still been an issue. Like, and I don't know if we have a solution
Right.
for that. Like AI can replace X, Y, Z, but like we still need people, in the trades. And I don't know what the solution is for that, but it's definitely a
Well,
need across a lot of people I talk to.
yeah, they just got to be more productive. We got to be more productive today. So, it takes
Mm,
so much to keep the trains running on time, running a rental business. So the how
yeah.
like it's like cool and exciting to talk in broad strokes on tech and AI and all this cool stuff. But then it's like, all right, well, what is that? How can I actually use this stuff? What does that actually
Yeah.
mean for
Yes.
me? Because I don't even understand. Like everybody asks Gemini stuff, which is awesome, by the way. But um, generalized knowledge is becoming more commoditized, which is cool. But like
Mm,
our actual workflows and like, um, where we struggle with every day, there's not been a lot of change. So that's
mm,
where tools like what you're building is fantastic. I mean, there's always going to be the nuts and bolts of, okay, we got to check this machine in. Are we checking it in properly? Is there correct documentation, for example? Are we taking those pictures? Are we doing the fundamentals we need to do to be successful as a business? And I think that's not going, that's going to be there, right? So how do we get better at the fundamentals throughout the business? So can we partner, with someone that, can help us digitally? So like we kind of have this digital storefront for our customers and we make it very easy for them. We make the process really easy because so much of my time and my energy is spent on getting the best people, making sure we're on top of our equipment, making sure we're making the sales calls we need to make. That's not going away. I think getting out to job sites as a rental business to make those relationships is AI is not replacing that.
no.
And that's what's kind of beautiful. That's what I fell in love with in 3 store rental company, right? And then also serving rental companies is just, look, in car rentals, there's what, 4 players in their own. It's really like
Hmm.
Enterprise, Hertz, and Avis. Like that's kind of the deal. Then they have their like sub brands. And then why isn't that the case for equipment rental? Of course, there's been an insane amount of M&A. That's not going to slow down, but still, you have so many incredible entrepreneurs that started with $1,000. They know their area really well. They know the equipment that's needed really well. They know the customers really well. They know the jobs that are happening. They're on top of it. They're like a partner into the customers they serve. That's so cool. I mean, that is like the American dream. So there's like, the reason why, ARA is like one of the, just an insane amount of, was it 12,000 members or whatever it is. It's just really inspiring that you can, still make it, right? And just like start with a few machines and keep growing and keep adding. So anyway,
Yeah, we talked to all those guys. They got one machine, they've got big dreams, and some make it, but the success rate's better than me and you doing software. Better
yeah,
than 5% success rate, 4%, whatever it is. I'm curious, like a lot of people, some people would say that given enough time, the independents are going to go away, and it's going to be the big
mm,
box nationals. One, do you think that's going to happen? And two, how do independent rental companies win in your mind? Because you kind of grew up in that space. Now you're on the gear flow
yeah,
side. Like, what makes independent rental companies great?
yeah. I think So same thing as probably your listeners. We competed with those guys. I mean, everybody competes with those guys. We are. So I worked in the western suburbs of Chicago and Elmhurst, and yeah, and again, it's getting back to knowing the area, knowing the jobs, knowing the customers personally, and just being relied upon. I think
Hmm,
that like that is a different. There's all of that is important because it's not an automobile. It's not a car. When we fly
hmm,
somewhere, if I'm flying to Atlanta, I know I'm going to be in Atlanta for 2 days. This is when I'm going to fly in. This is when I'm going to fly out. I'm going to get a sedan. So I'm going to go, and book from probably the cheapest, right? And
mhm.
there's not a lot of relationship. I don't need a guy at Avis.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
uh, but look, and getting back to the beginning of our conversation, the reason why downtime is so important and the reason why, this is my business on the line. I've got this job that I know we got to be in and out within 3 weeks. Let's pretend. I need this 60-foot boom. And, look, I care about price, but I care about getting the job done right. And I
Yep.
care about this thing working. And I care about, look, if actually I'm off on my estimate, we need to get a little higher. We need an 80-foot boom. I need to know that someone's going to pick up at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., because I got to get a bigger boom the next morning and I need
Mm.
them to make it happen. Right. That is, I mean, that's not going, that's different than a car. You're not going to, yeah. So that means that, again, getting back to the workflows, that's why it's so important. And really the business to business side, the tech side of the world that we're in construction, is really around building software around the workflows to make them easier and better or automated, but not replacing. It's not like that's going to go away. It's not like, that need is going to magically disappear. These are companies that are going to need to rely on human beings to help them. Now they can do it quicker, right? And there should be easier ways to help them,
Hmm.
both internally at the contractor side, their workflows, and then as well as the rental company side. But yeah, it's hard to commoditize that. I think, and you'll see it all the time. You'll see a successful sales rep at one of the nationals go out and start his or her own thing, or you'll see, right, because they gain this knowledge, and they know customer support really well. They understand the industry really well. They've got relationships maybe with manufacturers, so Bobcat's willing to back them or whatever. Um, I think that's what keeps it fresh. That's what keeps it new, and exciting. And it's still growing. I think it's like 5.5% CAGR, right? I think it's a $60 billion industry, and it's like a 5% every year CAGR. And yeah,
Yeah, I think when we started in 2020, people have heard me say 60 billion in 2020. This year they say around 85, 87 billion.
was that right? Oh, I
Yeah,
had old
so
data.
it'll
Oh
be
wow.
100 billion plus here soon. And but I think you touched on something right there though around why independents win. It's like because of the service, right? It's 7, 8 o'clock at night. You're gonna pick up. You're gonna get there, right? We've already talked about why time is money, right? Because if equipment's down, we've now probably like at least $20,000 into the hole in this episode, right? If we had to pay her down, but like,
Yeah.
right, but like the Nationals, like they're strong, right? They are the biggest for a reason. But I think when you have entrepreneurs who have what I would say is act like an owner mentality because they are the owner or their team feels like owners, like you can't beat those guys. Like the independents with the grit and the will they have, like they're going to win because, no offense to the Nationals, but if you've got employee number 10,000, I don't think they've got the same grind mindset that the guy who started out his backyard or like your father-in-law with $1,000, right?
And remember who they're serving. They're serving. That's right. I mean, it's a very long tail in construction. Extremely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that and the restaurant industry are the longest tail markets. So, what do you have? Kiewit, Bechtel, Walsh, maybe like Primoris. You got like, I don't know, a dozen companies, the ENR 500 or 100 or whatever. Like, they're going to serve businesses like them, is my point.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
serving somebody in the trades who started their business 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30, or maybe they inherited it from their parents or their grandparents, whatever. And there's a lot of empathy there. I mean, there's a lot
Yeah.
of, and it's very similar on the equipment side where they want to work with people that get it. Right. So not to say that, and look, I think back to the growing pie point, if the pie is growing, then all businesses can grow. So it's not, if the pie stayed at $60 billion, well,
Hmm.
now you're in a blood fight against Wall
Yes.
Street,
Yeah.
people that are publicly traded in London and
Yes.
two in the US. And, it's a whole thing. But if the pie is growing, they grow and you grow. Like it's not you're going to be competitive with those guys for sure. But if there's more equipment demanded, and by the way, I mean, that goes back to infrastructure. The infrastructure needs to be improved and upgraded throughout the United States.
Mm.
The backlogs I'm hearing, because I talk to contractors all day, it's the longest they've ever had, which is
Wow.
exciting, but it's also they're they're just I think it's accelerated some of our conversations because they really need to prioritize digitizing this essential part of the business and procurement that maybe it wasn't as big of a deal in a
Yeah.
previous times. But in any event, they've got so much work coming through 27. So, and
Wow.
that trickles down to the rental companies, right? So there's backlogs are the longest they've ever been. So for the next 24 months, it's still gonna, so again, so it's getting back to the growing pie,
Yeah.
and to work with companies that look and feel like them, right? That's
Yeah.
the other key point. Yeah.
Well, that's the whole like Simon Sinek the infinite game. Like, if it's a locked market or even shrinking market, you start to become red ocean versus, competitive, undercut competitors versus blue ocean. Everyone's got competitors, but I have not gotten the sense from the rental industry, and I've worked in other spaces, particularly in automotive. Yeah, everyone's got competitors, but everyone's generally willing to help out because I think the industry is growing, right? So construction's growing. You said the longest backlog contractors have had in over 2 years. Plus, rental penetration is increasing roughly 1% every year as well. So you have like multiple tailwinds that are growing. That's why
Right.
rental's growing so fast
Well,
because
and to be clear, that backlog, that's the longest it's ever been. So
ever
they're
been.
booked through 27. So the next 2 years,
It,
so yeah.
is that from the infrastructure bill that passed, or what's causing that?
Yeah, they'll say that. They'll say state work. They'll say private work, though. I mean, it's just
Mm,
so that's private work has been so the tariffs put a damper on that. They didn't pause any of the work towards the beginning of the year, but now they're
mm,
kind of coming back, and it seems like that's not as big of a deal as people maybe reacted to in Q1, at least on the large project side. But yeah, no. So it's like federal level. It's that funding. It's state funding. It's private funding. It's all kind of
yeah.
hitting at the same time, and so it's like the longest backlogs ever is what I'm hearing. Yeah,
Yeah. I don't know how much you're hearing about on the data center side, like in Texas in
yeah,
particular. Apparently, Atlanta, where I live, is the second fastest growing data center place. And I had breakfast this morning with a electrical contractor. He does business development for them. And he's like, I can't even bid on any more projects right now because we don't have enough people to go build the data centers because obviously, and so AI is booming right now, right? You need data centers to power that.
right,
And, I think even with the big beautiful bill that just passed, like part of that is like pretty much hands-off restrictions off on AI for the next 10 years, which is further going to increase that boom. A lot of people think we're in the first inning of AI, by the way. So what does that mean for
yeah,
data center? I mean, I just think building is going to continue off of the infrastructure bill, but now the AI stuff that's happening, you need big data centers to power it, and we don't have enough, right? In Texas, Atlanta has a lot of it, and then goes back to the labor part is, that could all be great. We still don't have enough people to do the work.
yeah. There's going to be and with onshoring on the manufacturing, there's going to be manufacturing is going to come back. I just think it's going to be you know robots running this stuff,
Yeah.
right? So what does it
Yeah.
take to stand up a factory today in the US if how much labor do you need now from our side of
Mm,
it, from like Quipli and Gearflow and the companies we serve? It's still got to be built. So I think the
yes.
building is still that's pretty bullish in our industry, which is great. But then on the actual like job creation, it'll be interesting to see how much the
Mm,
plant that left in 1950 that's back in 2030. Maybe in 1950 it employed 5,000 people. Does it employ 500 people today? It employ 50 people today? Like I don't know. And the output's that so much greater, right? But like how many jobs does it create? That's another angle to this. So it's the data center side, but it's also and then there's the infrastructure side, which we talked about. I think that's a lot of the companies I talk to. They're just backlogged in these straight up highways, roads,
infrastructure.
bridges. This infrastructure side, and then there's the onshoring, right? What that does, but it's all bullish for. I think. Look, I think it's just a great time. As boomers retire, it's a great time to start a company in rental. It's a great time to be a contractor, getting back to the trades, right? Like it's because there's been the norm has just been to go to college and try to get into middle
Yeah.
management. It's just such a great time to get out there, and there's so much to build.
Yeah. A lot to build, and technology platforms like Gearflow can help companies get there. I want to get back to procurement. That's something I
Sure.
honestly think about every day. But why is that important for fleet teams to keep jobs running smoothly? And how does that happen today for the heavy civil contractors? Is it more decentralized or centralized? How does that work today?
Yeah, that's great. So procurement today is like there's there's core systems that contractors have. So it'd be the fleet management systems of the world. Your HCSS, your Tenna, your AssetWorks, Fleetio, and then your ERP. So for accounting software, SAP, Vista, etc. So those are well established fields. They
Yeah.
have different options. There's this has been around for a long time. Then in the middle, we like to call it. So we like to call it like fleet management and your ERP. Those are cornerstone systems. And then what's happening in the middle, of course, getting back to the job, right? It's all centered around that. The job needs assets repaired or replaced.
Hmm.
Maybe they didn't even know they needed an asset. They need a new one, right? But they need to, their owned assets or rented assets, or they need their equipment repaired. They might need a rental repair too, right? Just depending on the nature of the relationship with the rental company. But that's what they want. That's what they care about because they got to do their work, right? Getting back to the paver downtime, right? That's what they want to do. So today, that is a very manual process. That procurement process starts from the operator. Like I said, might go to the foreman. Foreman like gives an equipment specialist. Equipment specialist has to get with somebody back at the shop. Maybe that's a logistics coordinator, equipment coordinator, somebody, parts coordinator. And then procurement starts. And then they might go out to vendors, right? But there's that internal process. The job doesn't care. They just need their stuff, right? They need something fixed or they need a piece of equipment. So we think that's a gap. We think that just based off what we've heard and learned from these contractors is like that's always way it's always been done. So and so tells so and so. They might send an email or there's this paper form, and this paper form goes to this person, and that person gives the paper forms at the end of the day to this person, and that person doesn't get to it till the next morning, and then blah blah
Mm-hmm.
blah. And it just takes time. It just takes
Mm-hmm.
days, and that's just a ton of waste. It's also high data entry, error prone, etc. Right. So if we can reimagine procurement from end to end, and procurement is not just the, hey, I call my rental company or I book online with Quipli, like it's all the way before that, right? It's like there's a need, there's something that happened at that job, and there's a request there. So how can you make that go as smoothly and quickly as possible to eventually get to the vendor quickly, and then vendor fulfills, hopefully same day, next day, or whatever, right? But measure that performance as well. That would be a boon to these companies. So if you zoom back out, so that's kind of the workflows and what we're feeling, what we're hearing from these contractors. But man, think about that. So now you've got your fleet management software, you've got procurement software, and you've got your ERP. So what does that now mean when it comes to now you've just can harness all this data. So by the way, all this data today, it's unlost, it's uncaptured, it's just happening. People are just getting work done, right? But
Mm-hmm.
what if those workflows were harnessed? What would that mean to your business? Well, uh, you know, uh, what machines are performing well, right? So what are we spending the least on in terms of a brand or a type of machine, right? What are the easiest that are actually performing out in the field, as an example? What am I spending too much money on in a rental that maybe I want to buy? Sorry to all of your listeners, but what would I what would that mean? What else? Maybe what is the response time? What are my top performing vendors? So how quickly are my vendors responding? How quickly are they getting us the parts we need, the equipment we need? So I, as a fleet manager, should be able to ask questions, and large learning models are good at taking data that contextualize the information, and then spinning it back to you, maybe some suggestions or maybe some viewpoints you hadn't even thought of on your own fleet, as well as what would be nice is all these other fleets that are operating in the same platform like Gearflow, right? So you've got uh, to be able to leverage insights on your team, your fleet, and your vendors from your own data, as well as across all these other companies that are using the platform every day, to make it this really robust system for these guys to just basically get more work done, drive productivity. There's gonna be a ton of cost savings there, and it should just be seamless. It should just be no more wondering when my equipment's going to be here, no more wondering when my part's going to be here, my machine's going to get fixed, when is this going to show up at the job. Equipment should just be at the job. It should just be that seamless where that does not slow a project down. That is not the reason. It's, today that could very well be the reason, right? Oftentimes, where in the future we think that procurement just runs, it just happens, and then you're as an operator or as a person working for the contractor, you're getting fed the optimal route. Meaning, I need a 60-foot boom for this job. I'm 50 miles away from my yard, from my shop, for our business, not a rental company. So that 50 miles, I can ship in a 60-foot boom because it's on our yard. Maybe that's the optimal route. Or maybe there's not a 60-foot boom available from us, but there is one down the street, 5 miles away from a rental company. That's the optimal route. So can software help us just find the optimal route? Because today, again, that's something else that takes time. It just takes, just as we only have so many hours in a day as people, we've got to take lunches, we've got to do our own thing. And, we don't often know, then this is more work we have to do. And oh, by the way, I'm at the contractor, I need to update the job, and the job's pissed off, right? So can it be as seamless as updating, that job in the background where they're just getting push notifications and yeah.
So that world where, I need a part right now on the job site and it shows up, not in 5 seconds, but really fast and it's already being routed. Man, how far from that world are we in your
Yeah.
mind?
Well, that's what's fun about this is that is math. So that's how we That's our experience as consumers. Now, but when we go to work, I think here's a key difference between, and by the way, this is what, and we talked about at the beginning of our journey, but it was more around like e-commerce was, I think when we think about like procurement, we just
Hmm.
think about our own experience as consumers. But
Right.
what's actually happening at contractors or businesses is different. It's not like I just need to book a rental car. I just need to buy this thing off Amazon. It's not that simple. It's people might have to
Complicated.
approve it. Right. And, there's different ways we can solve this problem. Do we even want to fix this machine? Is it going to cost too much money? Maybe we just sell this machine. Maybe we buy a new one. Who are we going to rent this from? Why are we going to rent it from? All to our conversation earlier. There's more involved and there's more people involved out of necessity. So, but at the end of the day, it is math. So can you serve decisions to people faster? Can you do some of that work that might be needed to be typed into a spreadsheet today or
Mm.
an email today or a text or a phone call or whatever, and like that internal coordination as well as external coordination, can you make that so quick and so that you're serving up decisions for people? So you're serving up, route A, route B, or if those don't
Mm.
work, you could also look at route C. But like, that is work. That's what's happening today offline. So we want to, this is not done in a vacuum. A shopping cart doesn't work for at least who we serve. It's like a it's like optimal routing instead of a
It's
I'm
it's
gonna
a complicated, multifaceted decision, including like what's needed, approval, price, what's available, how long it's going to be here. And you think about like, when you're hiring people, right? Like, level one employee comes to you and say, "Hey boss, I got a problem." Right? Okay. Level two is like, "Hey boss, I got a problem. Here are your three solutions." And level three is, "Here are your three solutions, and I recommend option A, and here's why. Can I have your approval?" Right? So you're talking about that world where like
correct.
all these things are being done. Like as the decision maker running the project, you're still deciding between A, B, and C, but you're not doing the legwork to figure out what is A, B, and C to begin with, right?
Right. Yeah, that is software that should be serving those routes to you, and then and then by the way, to your point, maybe it's over your cost threshold. Maybe it's over $5,000, and it
Yeah.
needs to go to your boss, right? So that should land in his or her queue, and right,
And I think probably one of the challenges you face, and I know we have faced also, is obviously with integrations between tech stacks, different technology platforms, all
right,
different underlying code and different incentives. Some are open API, some aren't. And they say it's open API, but it doesn't really work that well, right? And I think that's probably
yeah,
been a challenge for probably frustration for a lot of people, particularly contractors, because like, hey, why can't my telematics talk to my rental system and talk to Gearflow and talk to QuickBooks and have everything? And well, it can. It takes a lot of coordination around multiple parties. But I think what we're seeing with we can talk about AI here in a second. I hate saying AI, but it's that transformational. I think we have to talk about it because I think you can sort of bypass these API integrations, right? And I think what we're seeing and talking to other people in the technology space is these agentic platforms or agents who can sit on top of your system and do work for you, right? Do the work that you don't want to do, right? So, potentially, I'm just hypothetically talking here, right? Talk about the scenario, you're trying to tee up option A, B, and C to fulfill a need for a part, et cetera. Well, in the old world, at least before AI, we would have to have it is just math, but it is a lot of complicated integrations and formulas, and you have to do all that work. And I think what's happening with agents now is they can bypass a lot of that and sort of solve these discrete problems. So that's something I'm thinking about is like, especially as we talk about labor shortages, is what is the
yeah,
work that's not being done in construction that people don't want to do, that they don't have time to do, that's not that they really just don't want to do, right? Because they love talking to customers, they love being with equipment.
right,
What is that work that's being done, and how can agents do that work for people? I think that's something that a lot of people are thinking about right now.
yeah, and it's so the application of that would be um have to be done within the workflows, like within
Yeah.
like where is it in the work that can be automated, or and again, when we talk about optimal routing, here's the next level of that might be, so for whatever it is, so
Yeah.
you have software serve you optimal routing. If you're a VP of fleet, could you just set it? Could you just have like an if then, you could just
Yeah.
like kind of give it an instruction,
Yeah.
and then it can make decisions up to $5,000, or it can, it can do things and cut POs maybe like
Yes.
up to a certain amount, right? And
Yep.
so, but it's still controlled by whomever. And then,
Hmm.
uh, yeah, and so that's the fun, like, dream state here is like, okay, well, the it needs to be captured. First step's the first step. The reason why we can go to Google and we can go to Gemini, we can go to ChatGPT and all this stuff. Like, there was a paper Alan Turing wrote back in the 40s. It was like, then they did they broke the German code and let the Germans know about it. But then they built the first
Right.
computer where they were like, yeah. So it's like, should the computer operate? Should it operate essentially more as like a calculator or like a human, like, that can think? And so there's been a lot of these attempts over the decades. They just didn't have enough data. It turns out, of course, there's enough data on the internet. That's why it's generalized knowledge. That's why it works so well. But anyway, but that only goes so far as that, like, generalized um, data that the internet has. So, but if you train it on these things, to our point, and then you can give it, it can learn. It does learn through more context or more data. It's linear algebra. It's not like magic. It's still math. But yeah, and then you can, give it more instruction to take more of the work. So it might be up to, probably what's going to happen is probably going to be up to the business owner or the COO or just somebody's like gut for how much, maybe in their view, risk or appetite they might have to have an artificial intelligence, an LLM, make certain decisions. So I guess getting back to my time as operating a rental company, it might be, some of the, just maybe the non-relationship things I might do, like in
Yeah.
paperwork
Hmm.
or processing or
Hmm.
any of that, like, or if it's making decisions on fixing machines, can it help me make better decisions there? Can
Yes.
it, automate some of my, back end stuff that I'm doing when it comes to paperwork and it comes to accounting and all that? So I can spend more time with customers and we can have a better fleet. And now we can grow our business with just less overhead, right? And, just
Mm.
less busy work, right? So there's overhead side, but then there's the busy work side, or, you know, um, so anyway, but yeah, it's exciting, the tool that it can become.
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing it happen in freight seems to be like one of the industries that these agents are taking off a lot for whatever reason. I think I don't think we know how it's going to play out in construction or rental. I think, but what I do think will happen is there will be some use cases of work that like rental companies just hate to do. It's
Yeah,
low risk
yeah,
work. It's paperwork,
yeah.
busy work, admin work that they hate to do. They don't want to do. They can't staff it. Those are great opportunities for agents to do work that ultimately, again, get the rental companies spending more time with their customers, increasing uptime, things like that. That's where I think
Yeah,
this will start to play out in the next few years.
to give you an example, this is a, contractor we work with that has a team of 300 people that update smart sheets all day.
Yeah,
Smart sheets
and
on smart sheets.
that they have 300 people. That's all they do.
Yeah. I mean, well,
Not the
probably
whole 300.
80%. Yeah.
Okay,
Well, no,
well,
probably about 80% of the work. Probably about 80% of the work.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
that
there's
gets into the
decisions that
yeah.
might need to be made, but it all comes back. Then it's like, you got to update this and you got to update that thing. And you have to, like, that's the work that,
So, like, I have this little belief, embrace reality, not as I want it to be, but as it is. And the reality, again, I'm going to say something people may say is controversial, but like the reality is like there are agents out there today, AI agents that can do that work, generally speaking. Like if it is really updating spreadsheets that exist. So the question is then how does that manifest itself in different spaces? Because that those are real jobs that people do every day, right? I think there's a lot of implications to how this plays out. That's why I go back to what's the work that's not even being done. Those to me is like the easiest stuff. Like, hey, I know I need to update my CRM. I know I need to go log these records. Like, one example, like, there's tools out there, right, that can listen to your phone calls that come in all day rather than you sitting there writing your notes down, typing in the system. The system could just automatically log that stuff. Things
yeah,
like
that's right.
that. That's the work that I think will be automated. Because that's work people don't like to do. I don't want to sit here and log stuff. I'm not,
Yeah.
I want to talk to customers, right? And I think that is where this stuff will sort of manifest itself in rental and other spaces. I just have two quick questions. And we'll wrap up here.
Sure.
I guess
Yeah, no problem.
for first question, what's next for GearFlow? What's kind of on the horizon? You've been doing 7 years. If you're like us, it had many pivots, but like,
Yeah.
what are you excited about the next year, next 3 to 5 years, of where
Yeah.
GearFlow can go?
Yeah. So, to the parts side, that's where we really found, that parts is so much of a crux of uptime, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, you got to,
Hmm.
for the preventive maintenance side, for the reactive or the, non preventives. So, downtime. Um, so that's really where we found our niche and where we built the software around those workflows. And then what we learned is that, um, you know, a lot of the same workflows are happening on the freight side. So they need a machine dispatch from their yard. This is contractor yard to the job, right? Or vice
Mm-hmm.
versa. They need third party service. So they don't have enough mechanics. There's Heath, right? As an example, but
Mm-hmm.
they need third party service from whomever because they don't have enough mechanics to get to fix their machines. And they need rentals, obviously, right? So uh, those are the categories as well as parts that we're helping contractors procure, and that's what we're excited about. Now, that's really where more of my talk track was around was the,
Mm-hmm.
job site procurement. So those are the four things a job needs to really stay running to keep their either replace an asset or repair an asset. That's what they care about. And then the team internally is doing that work. Right. And again,
Mm-hmm.
this is like a lot of the offline workflows that we talk about, but they're getting it done. They're hardworking. They're well-meaning. They do a lot of work in the dark. They're underappreciated a lot of times. It causes
Yeah.
burnout. Updating
Mm-hmm.
spreadsheets, and people are pissed off with the job. They don't care how your day's going.
Yeah.
They
Right.
like, God damn it, we're 3 weeks over on this job, and I need this machine, and like that is their rightfully so. That's their whole world is making sure that job finishes on time and on budget. So anyway, a lot of pressure is being put on fleet team, and a lot of that comes back to procurement. We think this is just a gap in the market that that the jobs are underserved, the fleet team's underserved, and it could be dramatically improved with software built the right way and built from the ground up for this problem. And and so that's where, we talk about more ConExpo, but ConExpo is coming up. We do a lot of work for AEMP. That's the Association of
Mm-hmm.
Equipment Management Professionals. We'll be talking more about it there. But yeah, so, we're expanding from just that parts procurement for a contractor into more of what the jobs need to procure to keep their fleets running and keep their jobs moving. So, yeah, that's what we're so excited about.
I like the clarity of focus, right? And it's
Yeah.
taken probably several pivots to get there. Final question I asked everyone: what's the best career advice you've gotten, or maybe just good career advice you've gotten in your life that's helped shape your success at building GearFlow?
Oh man, it's hard to say one. It's hard to say one. I think look, I think going into, was maybe more relevant for listeners maybe, but I think learning from my father-in-law who started in the 1976 and like that, I always knew I wanted to do my own thing. I didn't know what.
Hmm.
And here he is starting with $1,000 when he was 26 years old and just, kind of made a career for himself and a couple businesses. So that to me was, it's kind of like what you learn. Maybe that's even unspoken. Like, what is that? There's so
Hmm.
much grit, there's perseverance, there's just relentless drive. Seemingly against all odds at times, right? It can feel when you're running a rental company or any company, we're running any company, feel lonely, feel tough. You're going to have people pissed off that don't agree with you. They think that you should go left when you want to go right, when you got to go right. There's, yeah. So, just, I think learning more the intangibles, right? So there's like the fundamentals and the tangible side of running a
Hmm.
business is uh, uh, was just really cool. I don't know if I'd yeah, I don't know. Who knows? Can't A/B test life? Who knows if I'd been able to
Right. Good
start or
point.
like maybe if I knew your odds, maybe that's part of it, right? Like you just got to be willing to be like, well, I'm gonna be in that 5%. It's like there's
Or
no logical
yeah.
reason other than just
Yeah,
figuring it out.
ignorance is bliss sometimes, right? I
Yeah,
think it's sometimes entrepreneurs in particular are optimistic by nature because I think you have to be to say, yeah, I'm going to be in the top 4%. Like, why? Like, why would you actually think that? That's like the whole stat. Like 80% of drivers think they're above average drivers. Well, like by the nature of that, it's impossible. Only 50% actually can be. People generally overestimate what they can do, but
yeah.
starting a business that may be a good habit actually, because otherwise you never give it a shot.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah, no way. No way. So anyway, but yeah, I'd say that. And then just like constant learning, right? So there's like
yeah.
one side would just be the grit but then you're just constantly learning from other people, from like this, right? Appreciate you reaching out on LinkedIn. And it's really cool to hear Quipli's journey, your story. And, yeah. And so that's where, I feel like work is never done to just
Yeah.
continually you know, meet new people, gain their perspective. How are they solving challenges?
Yeah.
What did they learn and what do they take away from others they've met, which is your question,
Mhm.
right? And yeah, Man, I wish I had a slogan for you, but I just don't. It's just it's
Yeah,
more of
I mean,
the act. Yeah.
the growth mindset and the journey's never done. I'm reading a book over here called it's about this doctor, but it's called Mountains Beyond Mountains, and you can see it. But it's a Haitian proverb, but effectively every time the idea is every time you climb a mountain, there's another mountain, right? You're just never the journey's never over, and that's life, and how you get
Right.
through it as well with the growth mindset, humility, just learning
Right.
every day, bringing your best self. So I've thought about
Right.
that lately. Mountains beyond mountains. Every time you climb a mountain, there's always another one. So that keeps it fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Well,
will say, yeah, you gotta, being able to take time to meditate in the morning. I have done that. It's just,
yeah,
just a nice time to. There's a lot of pressure during the day, and if you continue to
yes.
sprint, and that I was guilty of this for sure. If you don't stop sprinting, you're gonna get burnt out. It's gonna go too fast for you. You need to give yourself some time to kind of get back down to zero, get your heart rate down, get ready and prepare for the day because you're to your point, this is the journey, right? This is the journey's the destination. So you gotta enjoy the journey. Otherwise, what are we doing? Like sprinting to a thing in the
Yeah.
future that like, oh, then you'll enjoy it. No, it's got to be
It's
enjoyed
all
now.
about the journey.
Yeah.
And since we've started, we've now spent $12,000 if your paver was down the whole time. So it's good to make that real for everyone. Well, we'll leave it at that, Luke. Thanks for coming on. Awesome episode. Love what you're doing, and hopefully have you on again in the future.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me on, Kyle.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.